But he told me if I stand close to you, I get absorbed more.
Okay, let's continue where we left off. The question we're learning lately, who is the kohen that's, so to speak, kosher to be a kohen to do Pidyon Ben? So you're learning if there's a scholar, it's better to give it to a scholar. If there's a relative, it's better to give it to a relative. Whether you could do it with a kid under bar mitzvah, it's questionable. Do different opinions in halacha and things like this. Okay, now, what happens, a kohen who's what's called a cholol. Now, the cholol means, basically, he's desecrated because he's not a real kohen. He's an offshoot of a kohen marrying somebody that he's not allowed to marry. For instance, a divorcee, like it says, Isha zona v'chalola lo yikachu v'isha grusha me'isha, a woman that had relations with a non-Jew, Zaina, the more common one is if she is a divorcee, so a kohen is allowed to marry her. If a kohen marries this woman and has a kid, the kid is called a cholol. Desecrated, I mean he's not a kohen, at all not. He's even allowed to go to cemeteries, he's not a kohen, it's period, he's not a kohen. So obviously, you can't redeem a kohen, a firstborn, with a kohen with its a cholol. And if you did, it's completely not valid, you have to do it again. Now what happens when you did it, you didn't know he was a cholol. You didn't know that he wasn't a kosher kohen. And afterwards, you found out that he is a cholol, that he's really not, but you already gave it. So then, the din is, you have to go do it again by a different kohen. There's two opinions though in halacha. Does the original kohen have to give back the money? Because now he wasn't he wasn't a kosher kohen. So some poskim say no, at the time you did it, he was a kosher kohen. Then when you gave him the money was good. So there's two opinions in halacha if he has to give back the money or not. But one thing is for sure, the guy would have to be redeemed by another kohen.
Status back, let's say he didn't know he married someone that he wasn't supposed to, divorce her,
If a kohen, the question is, can a kohen get back his status? Sometimes not, sometimes yes. In other words, a cholol can never become a kohen again. If he's a cholol, that means he was an offshoot of a... But what happens if there was a kohen that married a divorcee? So while he's married to the divorcee, he's not a kohen. You can't give him kohen, he can't do a berchat kohanim, he can't do anything. He's not a kohen. What happens though if he divorced the woman that he wasn't allowed to marry? And then he made what's called neder al das rabbim. He made but he made a vow that's called al das rabbim on the opinion of the community that he'll never do it again. In other words, let's say a very simple case. A kohen didn't know, he was married to a divorcee, okay? Then he became very religious, okay, and he divorced the wife he wasn't allowed to be married to. And then he made a neder al das rabbim. In other words, he made basically a vow that he's never going to marry a woman that he wouldn't be allowed to marry. So then, because he did tshuva in that way, then he could become a kohen again. But until that happens, that he has to make a neder al das. In other words, sometimes it happens, okay, the guy divorced her because he didn't like her, not because he's now to stay married to her. But it's possible he'll do the same thing again if he marries a woman that he does like. You know what I mean? So then, that person is still not a kohen. What?
And if you have relations with a non-Jew, the same thing?
Who?
The kohen.
No, if a kohen married a non-Jew, so then he's not kosher to be a kohen until he divorces her and makes a neder. But a kohen just having intimacy with a non-Jew does not disqualify him from being a kohen. But once he marries them, then he does become disqualified.
What if the guy is 40 years old, and then we ask him, are you Jewish? Yeah. Are you Kohen? I don't know. Let me find out. And then he says, oh, I called my grandmother. And he says, you Kohen. Is he a Kohen? He hasn't. You
have to do more research into it to see if the guy is, the question who is believed.
So, but if he comes from Kohanim, still he will keep.
Well, then you have to find out maybe his mother was not allowed to be married to the father, so then he's not a Kohen, he's a Cholol. So then all those things have to be found out. One of the ways, and not everybody agrees with this, that what do they do when a kohen today, an older kohen, it's very hard for a kohen Baal Tshuva to find a girl that was never intimate with anybody before. Now, if it was only with Jews, it's not a problem halachically, right? Because technically he could marry her. But on college campuses, many of them were non-Jews. So one of the ways they try to say that this kid is not a kohen and therefore he can marry a girl that was either with a non-Jew or divorcee, is by trying to prove that this kid is not really a kohen, because maybe his father was married to a woman that he wouldn't be allowed to marry. Okay? But again, in that case, it's also, but the problem is sometimes they say, no, I want to be a kohen. I still want the status of a kohen, but I want to marry this girl. So that you can't have the cake and eat it too.
Okay, so if somebody that is a Kohen, and because of some transgressions is disqualified from being a Kohen, and his child shouldn't be a halal.
It depends. The child was born before or after?
Of course, after his shenanigans.
Okay, so then the kid's not a Kohen. But what happens? What happens if a Kohen, let's say, was married to a regular Jewish woman? They had kids. Okay, so the boy's a Kohen, right? Then the guy divorced his wife and married a divorcee.
Okay.
So those kids are still Kohanim.
Right.
His new kids that he'll have won't be Kohanim. So there's a lot of issues with the, how you disqualify your Kohen or not. Okay, now it's another interesting thing. Even though a Kohen with blemishes is not allowed to work in the Bais Hamikdash, there's some 50 yad, 59 or so blemishes that a Kohen is not allowed to work in the Bais Hamikdash if he has those blemishes. But as far as doing Pidyon Haben, he's still a Kohen. It's just because of his blemish he can't work in the Bais Hamikdash, but he's still a Kohen. He can't go to cemeteries, so all that stuff. So that Kohen is kosher even l'chatchila. Then he could. There's no question about it.
If the woman is extremely beautiful, they say, okay, well, nobody could stand that temptation, so he's forgiven.
No, sorry to tell you. Sorry.
Rabbi Shusterman, any second Mashiach is coming, and the Kohanim needs to be ready. So, are we going to test them? How do we know you're a Kohen? How do we know you're another Kohen? Who's going to read Mashiach to the second?
The Gemara says one of the main functions of the big Bais Din of 71, because don't forget that was the Supreme Court. They had a lot of other small courts all over the place. So it's only if the other courts didn't know the halacha they went to the Supreme Court. But the other courts were very big, scholars of people that were in the court. So the Gemara says the main job of the big Bais Din that sat at the Bais Hamikdash was to weed out which Kohanim were good and which Kohanim weren't good to work in the Bais Hamikdash. That took time. There was a lot of blemishes that to check, and there's a lot of physical work checking out if a Kohen did Avedis. I'll give you another example. A Kohen that goes to cemeteries. The Kohen goes to cemeteries. So he's not allowed to. And he's doing an Aveda which is unique for a Kohen. In other words, a Kohen, I'll give you an example. A Kohen, let's say, doesn't eat kosher, okay? He can still get Kohen. He can still do Berchat Kohanim, okay? Kohen killed somebody even accidentally. He's not allowed to do Berchat Kohanim. But as far as, let's say, a Kohen, okay, but if he does an Aveda, which is what's called Meyuchad LaKohanim, if it's designated for Kohanim, it's an Aveda that is designated for Kohanim, so then he's not a Kohen anymore. So a guy that goes to cemeteries, let's say a Kohen who goes to cemeteries, you're not allowed to call him up for a Kohen.
Is hospitals the same as the same?
Hospitals is a little bit different. So Mechal Shabbat technically is Shenatu Berchat Kohanim, but today Again, today we learned already. Mechalel Shabbat means he knows all about Shabbat. He learned the system, he went through and threw it away. People that never grew up learning in yeshiva or things like that, where they don't know, they never knew. It's like the Gemara calls it Tinik Shenishba. Tinik Shenishba means a little baby that was captured by the Goyim, like the Cantonists in Russia, and they were raised as Goyim. So you can't call them a Mechalel Shabbos because they never knew. They never learned. So today in the world, generally speaking, most opinions say today's people that are not religious have a din of what's called Tinik Shenishba, unless if a guy mamish learned to know and threw it all away. Yeah?
What if this boy goes up to do that? Do you bring him down? Or you let him?
No, you just shoot him.
It's a Vaad Din. You can't shoot him.
Yeah, Yom Tov gun. Pepper spray. What?
The definition is very broad. It seems people that were went to yeshiva potentially, and they just didn't sink in. They don't.
Let's talk off the record, even though it's on tape. A kid that didn't learn Chassidus in his yeshiva, you can count it to Tinik Shenishba. Because they don't know what God is all about. They don't know what Shabbos is all about. I'm talking about the Kedusha of Shabbos. And what things are. If they don't learn Chassidus, they really don't know. Again, I'm not talking about a guy that went and steiged and became, big. That's a different story. But generally, even Yeshiva Bachim, listen, nowadays, poskim try to find a leniency, not to say disqualify, okay, you can't, It depends how they learn it, if they internalized it or not. I'm talking about. It depends who they learned Chassidus with, where they learned, who they learned to. Did they internalize it, externalize it? That's the difference.
So such a person you don't call,
What?
you only learn about the
Again, every case has to be judged individually. True. Every case has to be judged individually if this person could be called a Tinik Shenishba or not. And then you have a different story. I'll give you an example of what happens. There are ex-yeshiva bachrim, they were very talented. They laned and they knew how to daven for the Yomid. They were good. And then they went off completely. And now they pop into a Chabad house. This happens pretty frequent. They pop into a Chabad house and they ask, they want to daven for the Yomid, they want to lane. Or the guy is looking for people to daven for the Yomid. This guy could daven for the Yomid. So the question is, can he let him lane? This question comes up a lot of times. So you have to know exactly details, but sometimes, let's look at it the opposite way. If you do let him lane, in other words, if you find a leniency that would allow him to lane and to be chazan, that might bring him back. Then he'll come more often. He'll start getting more involved. So it's easy to say, hey, you're shaygit, God, get lost. I'm not saying if it's against halacha, it's against halacha. I mean, there's something to talk about. But if you could find within halacha a leniency, a lot of times these people start coming back and they start doing this and they'll get more involved. And then they'll be able to do it better.
Rebbe pay more attention to hippies than
Rebbe paid, there's a story, we'll end with this. The story when the Rebbe told the story that before he was Rebbe, a non-fum guy came into 770 and the Rebbe spent a lot of time talking to him. So an older chassid from Russia, they weren't used to this type of stuff. Told the Rebbe off. Again, he wasn't Rebbe yet, so he told him off. So the Rebbe was a very sensitive person. He said everything met Rebbe's hashkacha pratis. The guy told him off, it bothered him, he went into the previous Rebbe. So the previous Rebbe told him the following. You can have a father that has a number of children. And some of them might be disabled. One child might be disabled, handicapped, whatever. So that child needs much more attention from the parents than a healthy child does. Because they're disabled. They need more love. So the Rebbe said, the previous Rebbe said to the Rebbe, every Jew by Hashem is a child. But some Jews are handicapped spiritually and disabled spiritually, you know what I mean? Special needs, special needs. So those children need more attention. So the Rebbe told me, you did a very good thing what you did. Because it's special attention that they need.